Hello, this is Jacqueline from Jack Knits, and check out this infinity scarf that I knitted. It is so warm and cozy. It is knitted with the half Fisherman's Rib Stitch. It is actually very similar to brioche knitting, so if you're a fan of brioche stitches, you'll want to check this out because here's the deal. It is so much easier to knit than brioche. So you'll want to check this out. In this video, I will give you complete instructions on how to knit this particular scarf, as well as specific instructions on this half Fisherman's Rib Stitch. So if you like what you see in this video, don't forget to subscribe to receive weekly videos all about knitting tips and tutorials and creative stitches and patterns. This half Fisherman's Rib Stitch is a great stitch to knit up for a really nice scarf or infinite cowl. It makes for a really warm scarf because it produces this really wide ribbing. It's nice and stretchy and squishy and thick, so it makes for a super warm scarf. What I also like about it is that it lays nice and flat, there's no curling on the edges, and it's kind of a reversible scarf. It has very pretty stitching for both sides. Now this is technically the right side, but this is the back side, and it also is a really pretty stitch. So it doesn't matter which side of the fabric you're seeing when you wear it, they both are really pretty. What I did for this scarf is I just chose two different alternating colors of yarn, but you can choose to knit this in one solid color or multiple colors. What I did is I made my stripes just all different size stripes, so to make it a little bit unique, but you can switch up the colors any way you want. You can also knit it just straight flat scarf, but what I did for this one is I seamed my edges together, so I had kind of a double wide infinite cowl that I could put around my neck like this, made for a really pretty scarf. So let's look at how to do this particular stitch called the half Fisherman's Rib. So to start, we're going to cast on 30 stitches. If you want a wider scarf, cast on more stitches. Narrower scarf, cast on fewer, but just make sure that it's in a multiple of 2 and even number of stitches. So let's cast on here. If you need a refresher on how to cast on, you can look at the link in my description below. I have a video all about the long tail cast on if you need a quick refresher. Now I'm not going to cast on the full 30 stitches for this tutorial just to save some time. Let's just cast on an even number of stitches here just to show you how this stitch looks and how to perform it. 15 and 16. All right, that should be enough. All right, so now the stitch for this cowl, for this stitch, is really just a 2-row repeat, super easy. So for the first row and for all odd number rows, and you know if it's an odd number row because your long tail from your cast on is on this side. So when you ever see your tail from your cast on, you know that you are knitting a odd number row. And for all odd number rows for this stitch is going to be simply to knit all stitches. So we're just going to knit across this whole first row and subsequently all odd rows. So super easy, just knitting. Okay, now row number 2, after the knit row, is going to be where we incorporate this half Fisherman's Rib Stitch. So the very first stitch on this row is going to be a purl stitch. So purl, 1 stitch, and then the next stitch is going to be the knit 1 below stitch. And let me show you exactly how that's done. So normally when you do a knit stitch, you're putting your needle right in that very first gap you see under the needle, right in there. Well, for knit 1 below, you're actually going to knit in the stitch below, and where that is, if you kind of separate your yarn here, you see this little gap? Right underneath this hump of yarn, this little bump is a gap, and that's where you're going to knit your stitch through. So you're going to insert your needle through that hole, grab your yarn and pull it back through that same hole. That's knitting 1 below, slide it off your needle, and that's the knit 1 below. Next one, we're going to do a purl again. Oops, purl, there we go. And then that knit 1 below again. So look for that little gap, insert it in there and do that stitch. and then the purl. So it's that 2 stitch repeat all the way to the end of the row. There's that gap, knit one below, purl, you're going to come up with 1, purl 1, and then you're going to have 1 stitch left, and we're going to knit every last stitch of that row. That will just make for a nice straight edge. All right, well that's it. That is the 2 row repeat. So the next row is another odd number row, see, because I see my tail here. So that again is just going to be a knit stitch. And you knit across that whole row. That's what makes this stitch so easy and fun to make, and knits up really quick because every other row is just solid knitting. So it goes really fast. And then that other row, just that knit 1 below and purl 1. Once you get the hang of that, that goes really lickety-split as well. So that is that 2 row repeat. I'm going to knit for a few more rows this stitch so you can start to see the pattern emerge. When you first start this stitching, it's really hard to see that ribbing. It takes a few rows for that pattern to really emerge. So I will knit for a few more rows so we can see how we're looking with this half fisherman's rib. So now that I have knitted a few rows, you can see this beautiful pattern emerging. This lovely deep ribbing with these elongated stitches make up this beautiful right side, and then the wrong side of the fabric actually is quite lovely as well. So it makes for a beautiful reversible scarf. If you'd like to follow along with this scarf pattern, I've got a link in the description below. Feel free to check that out and knit along with that. And I hope you enjoy this beautiful new stitch, the half fisherman's rib. I hope you found this helpful, and if so, please like and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. You'll receive notifications of new videos each week all about knitting tips and stitches and creative patterns. So thanks for watching. Happy knitting.